Animation has been a staple of pop culture for years. During that time, we've progressed and have reached a level of scientific understanding that was only dreamed of, all thanks to the influence of our favorite cartoons, right? From cloning to space travel, many on this list have quite the resume. But not every cartoon scientist has the IQ of Einstein.
Then who are we to judge?
Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Cartoon Scientist, Dumbest to Most Brilliant.
You'll bring about the end of the world with this.
There are a few rules that affect the ranking. We're going to be weighing the scope and scale of their inventions and creations. The scientists will be ranked on not only the reputation within their show, but what we actually see them accomplish on screen. And of course, if they only produce prototypes or unsuccessful final projects, they will lose major points for that. And they'll also lose points if they lack common sense, which is a bit of a trope for otherwise brilliant cartoon scientists. With that said, let's start at the bottom with the least intelligent and work our way up. First up, Dr. Weird and Dr. Fritz Hohenmorter are worth mentioning briefly, though they aren't too widely known, at least not in the same way the others on this list are. Weird is the one who's featured at the beginning of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and normally indulges in very destructive methods. He gets himself hurt a lot in the process, and while his monsters and robots are formidable, they do enough damage in the lab that they never leave. Fritz, on the other hand, is the doctor that features on Robot Chicken and gets a low ranking because all he's seen doing is reanimating the chicken. Both are mad scientists, but to the point they're only concerned with their immediate surroundings. Next from the bottom is Dr. Zoidberg. There is some divided opinion on how well he does his job. It's been stated that he only struggles with working on humans and that he's an excellent doctor to alien species, but we don't get to see too much of it. While he does make some good calls, helping the professor from turning into a Yeti and helping get Hermes his body back, he is also proven to be clueless on how to act.
You may feel a slight sighing.
He lives in a dumpster eating garbage, allows himself to be treated as less than dirt, and he will throw away anything for a decent meal. Dr. Otto Scratch and Sniff was a recurring character on Animaniacs. He's an educated man, and would be a successful psychiatrist if he wasn't trying to help some ridiculous characters. He takes social events seriously and tries to build a good reputation that he can rely on. He's easily taken advantage of, which is unfortunate because he does try to help others. There's a theory that the brain may not be the actual brains of his operation, but we don't delve into the possibility of Pinky being the smart one. Brain is seen as the powerful force of the duo, but none of his plans work. He talks about taking over the world, but has no reason for wanting to do so. His inventions are only to help himself, and he only wants to be in charge of a situation because he has a massive ego. He spends the majority of his time berating everyone, including the only other creature that tolerates him, and only lets up when asking for romantic advice. There's a theory that Brain may not be the actual brains of his operation, but we don't delve into the possibility of Pinky being the smart one. Plankton is the rival to Mr. Krabs, and his only goal in life is to get the Krabby Patty formula.
Now where does Krabs keep that formula?
But even with having experience in engineering, inventing, and robotics, he was unable to take a simple recipe in a bottle. Jack Spicer was dubbed a boy genius, and weird antics aside, this wasn't much of an exaggeration, but he had trouble using his intellect effectively when taking on the enemy. There were many times he gave up his leverage to be freed from a bad situation. Dr. Draken was one of the main villains of Kim Possible, but let's be real, he's nowhere near as successful as he could be. In fact, of the times he does manage to be a threat, it's because Shigo was leading him through the project and calling him out on mistakes.
This is not the time to question the nature of our relationship.
His robotics were impressive, and tech, such as the Mood device, was entertaining to see in action, but he didn't really seem to use his full potential. Bling Bling Boy had the money and smarts to dominate at least a small country, but he would get way too distracted by Susan. He was far more invested in using his connections and gifts of time travel and genetics to woo the Test Sister than he was to make a name for himself. We're pretty sure this is a flaw he's aware of, since he starts almost every interaction by stating his name. Next, we have Dr. Alphonse Mephisto. He was the creepy madman of South Park, and that is a strange honor to have, considering how many strange people reside in the mountain town. He's obsessed with cloning, and is the man people go to if they want something strange done. He was the one able to reveal Eric's father, and is often the voice to explain why an idea will or will not work. Making mini elephants is cool and all, but do we really need them? Or a monkey with more than one rear end? We have to rank him higher because of all he manages to do, but at the same time, we have to place him here due to his odd motivations. Princess Twilight Sparkle, though royalty, was also a sharp mind. In her world, magic and science often come together, and Twilight used her knowledge of magic to find solutions plenty of times.
Always glad to pass on my love of learning for learning's sake.
She also managed to become experienced in how the minds of her fellow ponies worked, often interviewing people on how they felt about her approach to friendship and peaceful resolutions. She was a top student, and even her human version was gifted in science and equations, quickly being granted the right to study in an independent lab, even in high school. Professor Oak deserves being mentioned. His main work focuses on Pokemon and how to breed and care for them while still preserving their lives, but he's also knowledgeable in meteorology and genetics. His expertise often comes up in times of crisis, such as in the Pokemon movie 2000, but since his focus is Pokemon care, we can't rank him much higher as a man of science. Professor Frank was one of those Simpsons characters around since the beginning. He was deemed one of the brightest members of the community for his robots, making a chess-playing arm, and device to call all the school children for snow days. But he also has a lot of weird and useless devices, such as a sarcasm detector and hamburger earmuffs. Though we will ask Professor, what is a pickle matrix?
He's still grappling with the pickle matrix.
Dr. Thaddeus Venture is likely not to be voted the world's best dad, but this isn't a list on morality. From a young age, he was raised to place intellect and ability to use it above all else. He's cunning and always finds a way out of whatever jam he's in. He's used time travel, built vehicles and weapons, but is pretty clueless when it comes to everyday life. He becomes confused at times, such as checking his email and mixing up spam in his real messages, and giving poor dating advice to Rusty. Mr. and Mrs. Fenton were known as the ultimate ghost hunting duo. Though their methods were extreme at times, they did make a decent living out of their obsession. They lose a lot due to being oblivious to what's clearly in front of them.
Located. Thank you for using the Fenton Finder.
While Vlad had a somewhat decent disguise, the voice made it clear it was still him, and not recognizing their own son? We don't drop them lower since evidently no one was able to figure out that the two people who looked and sounded the same were the same person. That seems to be a weird trait with heroes, ghost or not.
I did not see that coming.
Dr. Doofenshmirtz had a real rough life, but he uses the energy he spends frustrated at the world to make some interesting machines. He managed to make a variety of successful clones until he deleted them all by accident, and he almost had a very successful slave empire of monkeys, forever doing laundry. His worst fault is that he doesn't seem to take all the variables into account and winds up failing. His worst habit is putting a self-destruct button on everything he builds, which is almost always used against him. Now we'll mention Mojo Jojo. The very first time we see him, he's nearly successful in taking over the world with the bust of Anubis's head. He's been defeated by the girls more than a few times, but he's shown to have experience with gaining powerful allies, using mind control, and creating a variety of threats to use against the Powerpuff Girls. He's one of the most well-known villains simply because of all his near successes. Dexter and Mandark will put together, not just because they're in the same show, but because they're both young boys with a very narrow mindset and formidable foes to one another. They thrive on being able to show each other up, and they feed off of their rivalry. They lash out at others when things don't work out, and will do anything to manipulate a situation and bend things to their advantage. They're both able to build some pretty incredible labs and inventions right in their family homes without anyone knowing. Princess Entrapta is high energy and often overwhelming to be around. She's almost always seen with goggles on her head, ready to be plunged into an experiment. While some of her research does backfire, and sometimes her being overzealous can cause more harm than good, such as trying to demonstrate sound for a sound-motivated threat, she's always quick to roll with the punches.
I am now going to run.
Next, we have the resident of Super Jail, simply known as the Doctor. Deranged and driven, he's delighted in being able to use the prisoners for human experimentation. He creates machines, monsters, and all sorts of abominations he affectionately shows off. He stays in the jail so he can submerge himself in work that in any other setting would dub him a war criminal. But as horrible as his work is, you have to admit, it takes skill. Asami Sato worked alongside Avatar Korra and made quite an impact for their team. She was considered formidable and ruthless, even taking out her father to fight for her cause.
I love you, Dad.
She uses everything she's given in an almost effortless way, making her a challenging opponent. She adapts to each citation quickly and is able to think steps ahead of everyone she faces. Jimmy Neutron was a young boy genius. Much like Mandark and Dexter, he was more invested in his own projects and surroundings, making a lot of gadgets and tools that would make his own life easier.
Let's find out if she's an evil genius.
Such as having a robot dog, so he can have a companion without having to get shots for his pet, making so he didn't have to style his hair by himself every day, and be praised by his teachers. We rank him higher than many on the list, however, because he had a lot of experience dealing with multiverses, such as during his adventure with Timmy Turner, and dealing with aliens, such as when Carl was carrying an extraterrestrial offspring.
Kids can be a handful.
Professor Utonium was the creator of the Powerpuff Girls, making superhuman kids when all he was trying to do was make a family for himself. The guy was clearly successful, being regarded by the community and working from home before he created his daughters. He was also the one to lead to Mojo Jojo's intelligence, and while limited when interacting with women, is well aware of what to do to raise his kids with powers. Zim was said to be a scientist before he was tasked as an invader. Even in the show, we see him build a variety of things, from new eyes for Keith, to trick the kid into thinking a squirrel is him, to being able to remove organs out of a living thing and replacing them with inanimate objects.
You think you can fool a trained medical professional? Yes.
He's seen adapting his pack in a few scenes, and is always experimenting with the life he finds on Earth. We don't understand why he'd launch a chicken into the sun, but we will say, figuring out how to cover himself in glue to survive the rain was resourceful. Megamind has earned our next spot. Being an alien, he was an outcast for looking and acting differently. He didn't easily impress others, and so used a lot of his energy to make weapons.
Being bad is the one thing I'm good at.
We see from his later interactions when training Titan that he only wanted someone to present a challenge to him. He wasn't able to show a lot of his potential for a good portion of the movie because he simply wasn't driven to give his full. But what he does manage when he's successful is impressive. Able to use holograms to disguise himself, dehydrate and rehydrate living organisms, and using his quick wit to take down the power-hungry Titan are just a few of the shocking feats he managed. Next is Dr. Nora Wakeman. Known for her passion in robotics, she built Jade 10 to help keep people safe.
Call me Jenny. I changed my name to Jenny, remember?
She made a self-aware teenage robot, which is quite the feat. On top of that, she aided Jenny in being able to utilize new information and take on new threats. Jenny was her pride and joy, being a massive step forward for everyone in AI and robotic technology. Peridot was another alien that was just trying to adapt to what resources she had on Earth. She was stubborn to adapt at first, but once she got a hang of the Earth technology, she had access to her past experience as an engineer for Homeworld to create a drill to go all the way to the center of the Earth in order to face the cluster. Jumbo was deemed mad, but he was one of the most successful scientists of the galaxy. He was able to create Stitch and his many cousins, each one with a unique ability of their own, on top of their great feats of strength and endurance.
So it is a monster.
Hey, just a little one.
Jumbo was able to make various weapons and was considered a threat by the Galactic Federation. Had he stayed a shady character, he would be a scary supervillain. Vlad Plasmius was once an aide to Jack, but once he was cursed to be half ghost, he used it to gain success. He was always a top student, having been friends with Jack initially due to their shared interest in ghost and science. He seemed to be able to separate Danny from his phantom half, and though the flashback was not pretty, that couldn't have been an easy thing to do. Princess Bubblegum not only managed to rule a kingdom, but became one of the most advanced minds of the land. She created Lemongrab, and his brother made Guardians for the Candy Kingdom and was constantly researching trends to seek out possible oncoming threats. She's also one of the few scientific minds on this list that, while still struggling with certain interactions, had a good grasp on human behavior and interaction. She was able to easily reject people, calling one in particular out for only loving the idea of her. Susan and Mary Test rank far above Bling Bling Boy. They were way more ambitious, finding solutions to world hunger and making a variety of vehicles, genetic modifiers, and a time-traveling tea house. And admit it, when you saw the super backpack, you wanted one. Hanji Zoe was crazy at times, but her work with Titans was essential to learning how to take them down. The woman risks being flat-out devoured more times than we feel comfortable counting. She's high energy when it comes to discussing her research and is relentless when gathering information. Her sheer drive and passion alone makes her formidable. Factor in that she's nearly killed every time, and you have a mind the human race should be grateful for. Stanford Pines in his research actually resembles Twilight Sparkles in that they both wound up heavily relying on a combination of magic and science. He used Bill's abilities to know how to build a portal and made a lot of headway on researching the odd creatures of Gravity Falls.
You lied to me! Where does that portal really lead?
His journals wound up being as helpful as they were harmful. It was because Ford was smart enough to find out why Gravity Falls attracted so many oddities that kept Bill in place. He was able to use the leverage to buy time, and eventually, with Stan's help, defeat him. Of course, Ford wouldn't have gotten far without our next ranking, Fiddle Ford McGucket. The engineer that made the portal possible, he went on to create the memory eraser and make things such as a voice-changing elixir and a robotic version of a lank monster. He may have had a few screws loose, but he comes through during the conflict with Bill to make the Shack into a formidable foe, at least for a little while. The Bronze of Brilliance goes to Professor Membrane. Like him or not, he's done things that should be impossible, creating an energy source that didn't require fuel, tackling issues like world peace, creating scopes to look into other dimensions, and surviving horrible explosions. He's not the most attentive father, but his children are also an example of his intelligence.
Don't worry, son. I've got your back.
It's been stated that had the series continued, fans would have learned that Dib was created in Membrane's lab and was likely a near clone of the scientist, meant to take on his father's empire. That explains why Membrane was always pushing Dib to study real science. Professor Farnsworth was known for sharing good news while frequently leaving off the good.
Report to my bedroom for a private exhibition.
Now, the man could be clueless at times, but there are a lot of moments where he shows off why he was so honored through his life. He manages to make a machine that shows possible futures, saves the flow of time after Leela and Fry almost break it, and creates a way of space travel that moves space around the ship. The fact that this man makes a living from making the impossible possible is nothing short of remarkable. Our most brilliant scientist should not come as a surprise to anyone. After all, he's been stated to be the smartest man in the universe. We have to give the gold medal to Rick Sanchez. He's been called overpowered, full of himself, and downright insane, but the man has accomplished a lot. A portal gun to easily travel the multiverse, a set of robotic limbs that pop up when he loses an arm or leg, super robotic suits, and taking down 2 government powers in one day just because they both crossed him? The man is to be feared. But what do you think? Who are the most brilliant minds of the fictional world? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.